In this episode of Carlie's Couch, we discuss the role that delusion plays in manifesting our desires.
Dun, dun, dun.
I know that sounds kind of powerful. Sound like we're about to talk about something.
Look, I was about to say, and when we were planning, both of us had the exact same idea.
Yeah.
Synchronicity.
Yeah. Or I had an experience, so I was like, it's just something I was thinking about, but I wasn't necessarily thinking to make it an episode. But then when we come together and Carlie also had this down, I was like, yeah, I was thinking about that too. So let's talk about it. But first, we have a question from the couch this week. And the question is, what's the best book that you've read lately?
Yeah, but we'll be checking in because I'm back on my reader things. So someone said, When the Moon Hatched, Red Rising, and The Will of Many. The next one is someone said, The Body, A Guide for Occupants by Bill Bryson. And they were like, every chapter will blow your mind in some way. I read the whole thing out loud to my husband and I kept saying, listen to this.
Oh, wow. Somebody said Rebel Girl by Kathleen Hanna. Another said Your 5 Next Moves by Patrick Bet-David.
And then someone said,
that was me. I said Judge and Jury, James Patterson. But just because that was something I read recently. It was just an easy, fun read. I read it in like 2 days.
Oh, can I borrow that?
Sure, if you want to.
Good. Okay, cool. Man, for me, I'm finishing up the Throne of Glass series, and it's been really good so far. So if you like fantasy, do that. And then this last one, shout out to the homeboy Asa, Braiding Sweetgrass. He said it should be on everybody's list, especially if they've lived on native land, i.e. the United States of America. It gives insight on how this land should be treated and respected, just like the indigenous peoples that were here first, who were the original stewards. When we build infrastructure, we killed the land. When we plant gardens in these grounds with non-native plant species, it's another form of colonization. We have to better understand that the land doesn't need us to thrive and that the land will be much better without us and the ways that we've been living since 1492. How can we respect the land by having that same compassion, understanding, and relationship with it? Every single native herb that has been dug up and killed off had a story. Every animal that becomes roadkill had a story, and possibly its own offspring it was searching for. We kill generations with our greed, and this book will help people understand what the earth gives because we belong to it. It does not belong to us.
I wonder if that's a fiction or if it's like a straight, like a nonfiction type vibe, which it sounds nonfiction-y, but I like when stories are fiction, but it's such like a learning experience through their eyes. And that does sound very interesting. So thanks for those good books.
Yeah, and for answering very quickly. This was another, I'm going to throw this up there because we forgot to do a question and y'all showed up.
That's real. Thank you. So delusion. What does it mean to be delusional?
It means to see the world, this is Carlie's definition, not Webster's, but to see the possibility in the world and not necessarily exactly how it looks. So meaning, like, you're not like, oh, this thing, like, man, I'm broke and all these things. Like, you don't have to look at the world through your current lens of viewing. And so being delusional is the opportunity to change the way you're viewing it or what you think is real.
Similarly, probably just slight different little change. To me, I would say that delusion is acting as if what's not real is real. So same thing, but I like how you gave it more of like a idealistic vibe of like the opportunity for things that can happen. Whereas for me, I'm like, if you're like, oh man, that thing right there, and there's nothing there, that you're delusional. If you're like, yeah, I'm gonna get this island next month, and you owe $200,000 in bills, then that's delusional. And not to say that something's possible or not possible, but if you're living as if things are real that aren't real, then that is delusion. You're choosing to believe a particular narrative, and that's how you move. So it doesn't necessarily have to be extreme. Because again, sometimes when we're talking about like, well, I don't know if that's actually delusion. Would you say like when you look in the mirror and you're like, I look amazing, but you're working on this or that. That's not necessarily delusion because that's something you can believe, but you also wouldn't be like, ooh, I'm a size 0. Like that's where it's delusional.
Yeah, I can see that. I think that, cause what kind of spurred this episode for me is, I'm always interested in like the ethereal plane things and how we can manifest and make our lives better because, with our thoughts, we're creating the world around us, essentially. But then I saw a TikTok talking about how being Delulu is the Solulu, and then a bunch of talk about how that happens. But first, I think it's important to also say, like, there's such a negative stigma around delusion. And for very real reasons, like, it is a facet of many mental health disorders to be delusional, to have very terrifying experiences, depressive, isolating hallucinations, and it can be a signifier of some very serious mental health issues. And we're not talking about that per se, but I wanted to address that because that's a very real thing. And when people are like making all these things cute, but there's actually someone's reality where they're struggling through things, it's important to address.
Yeah, people actually can have delusional disorder. And then also there's the negative stigmas when you think about like the unhoused person who might be talking to the air, or when you think about a serial killer, or when you watch movies, the people who are just like, paranoid and just, talking, and or when they're real calm people who, what they're saying is like not real, and how they justify the things that they do. I think when we think about, oh, that person's delusional, I think we typically use it in a negative way, would you say? And yet, part of why I was thinking about this topic also the other day is because I was walking along the sidewalk in LA, and some guy came up on the light, and he was walking the same way, right? Not he was talking to me, and he came up to me, and the first thing he said was, "Oh, I like your hair. You got some braids," and he had sunglasses on and a hat. You know how in LA it's like you can't tell what people think the weather is, or like, and you can't tell people's situation. Like, are you cool as hell? Are you a hobo? I don't know. Somebody could be a millionaire or a hobo. You really can't tell in LA.
Very thin line.
I literally remember in my mind, Carlie, being like, real fast, like, Lex, is this about to be a day we're just gonna be like, all right, and just like try to run off and not talk to this person, or am I gonna be in the mood of like not entertain him, but like talk to him and whatever, of course, knowing like, but if it gets to a point, I'm gonna shut it down, right? Because people can switch up, get real weird on you. So I'm like, I was like, cool, he's talking, because we're going the same direction, so I'm like, I don't need to run off on him. Yeah, I'm going to catch my bus, the 304. People just like talk about everything. So I basically knew his whole life in 2 minutes. But I work at the laundromat down there. I'm security, make sure nothing pops off. Like, yeah, you gotta keep your eyes on people because, it's a good space, right? Where people want to hang out, get Wi-Fi. Yeah, man, it's a good space, but we got to make sure that. So we're just talking, right? And in my head, I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And then he starts talking about how, yeah, but I got a big check coming this evening. Actually, I'm going to my other job. I'm picking up this check. Oh, okay, cool. What you about to do with that? Yeah, I'm about to disappear on the laundromat for like 3 months, and in a little bit, I got some land out in Arizona. I'm gonna do some stuff with that. I'm probably gonna maybe get an island or something. And in my head, I'm like, here we go. Like, now I don't know what to think. Like, okay, and I'm still talking like, that's what's up, like, okay, but also at this time in my head, I'm like, all right, bro, like you definitely about to go catch this bus to somewhere. I don't know what you're talking about. Meanwhile, I was like, well, shoot, I just hopped off the metro walking home. So like, who knows, who knows this man's situation? Because I'm maybe able to tell a friend too, like, shoot, I want to get land on an island. I don't know his situation. He might have something popping. I don't know. So I try to remember that too when I talk to other people. Like, well, look, I'm right here beside him, so maybe we all in the same boat. But as he walked off, he's like, okay, well, this is where I'm going. So I'll talk to you later. All right, cool. But one thing I remembered and that stuck with me is that he was so upbeat, so positive. I think his demeanor is way better than mine is a lot of time if I'm just, out and about and I'm, to myself. Right. And or like not in talk mode, right? That's when people is like in the mood to talk and I'm not in the mood to talk. And so he was so positive and you couldn't help but the vibe still did something for me in that moment. And I was thinking like, okay, so he sounded a little delusional and he sounded happy and he sounded confident in a plan and he didn't sound like he was hurting, himself or anybody, or like he was at a job and doing things. And I'm like, is that so wrong? Or, who's not better, but like, I was like, what situation is better, that? Or if you're just like upset and depressed or, thinking about all the hard stuff all the time or what life really is, air quote. And that's what made me think about this. Like, does it hurt you to be delusional? I don't know. I think there are some positives to it.
I think so too. And I think this, like, we're not also not saying like toxic positivity, act like nothing's going on and nothing is wrong in the world. But I think like we're going to spend the time anyways thinking and creating narratives for our lives. So for example, man, I got laid off because I ain't shit. I was a terrible worker. They hated me. I'm never successful. It's always me first. You can think that, or you could be like, man, I got laid off because God has something better. I got laid off because I knew I needed to leave that position and I didn't. And there's something else out there for me. And it's like, so I think it's less about like creating things to then live in this. It's like the perspective we're choosing to look at life with.
Yeah. But it also doesn't have to be a reframing of the negatives. Because two things I remember he said also that I was like, oh, okay. The first thing he had said after he complimented my hair was, "Ooh, yeah, I just ate. My stomach's full. You know, I'm blessed." And I was like, yeah. So it's also like saying those positive things. Him saying, yeah, I have a great job over at the laundromat. It wasn't about like, dang, I haven't found something. I'm looking for something else.
Or I'm at this job I hate.
Right. And so even really it was just a 101 class, and I'm focused on the things that are good. And everything has a place of something good. And I'm expecting more good. That's what I felt coming away from him. And I was like, okay, you can't hate on that. Like, I can't be mad at that.
Yeah, and I think that that's one of the best ways to use delusion or like positivity in thinking is to really understand that things are happening for you and not to you, and choosing to not look at it through a lens of being a victim of everything all the time. But it's really just our perspective. Like, you can be like, ooh, I got $13 in my bank account. Like, you know, I'm struggling, but I just pay rent. Or it could be like, man, I pay rent and I still got $13. Cool. You know, I'm going to do some stuff to get money to come in and handle things.
Yeah. And that is something you kind of have to practice. But I think what you call delusional is when, let's say, so I you know me, and if you knew, oh, I just asked you for $500 last week, but then if you see me, or even maybe I'll say worse, but like even more so, like let's say if I was tweeting like, man, things are so amazing, I'm really excited about life right now. Yes, and it's like, what does that make you feel? How would that make you feel?
I don't think anything is wrong with that.
It's not like, oh, they're being phony or they're being fake necessarily. No. And I think like, and in that space, that's not as much delusion as like, oh, you can be positive and feel those things, right? Like life is hard and life is good at the same time. Yeah. So I think it's interesting that there's always a space for you to still feel great. Delusional, though, maybe more so would be if, okay, you just gave me $500 and I start talking about how, bet next month I'm making it my goal. Like I'm going on a vacation next month. And while that's delusional, it's not unrealistic, or it might not be like it's, oh, this is something way left field, but it might be not your real life at that moment.
Yeah, and so I think that's another great example. So like you just had to borrow $500 to make ends meet this month, but then you're looking up houses that are millions of dollars because you can envision yourself living there, or
that's delusion,
or you're like you know, like, man, when I get this $200,000 client next month, here's how I'm gonna spend it.
That's a better example. Great example.
And I like that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that's a beautiful delusion. Now, what I think a problem would be is you just borrow $500 to make ends meet, and then you trying to buy a Louis, or you're out there trying to then max out a credit card to look like a thing, or to try to seal this lie. You don't have to do that, but the way you can do it is, man, you know, when I get this client this year, this is Chanel that I'm gonna buy myself. Like, and you can go save it and put it on your mood board, or be like, ooh, I'm gonna look so good with my Chanel. You can be in your mirror like, I'm gonna put it with this fit because baby, that's a good way to be delusional, because I feel like that brings up your energy to then be able to receive those things and feel worthy of all of those things that might not be in your physical reality right in this moment. Absolutely.
So let's talk about how you can use delusion to help manifest your desires. Like, you're going into that now. But what can that really look like?
So one of my favorite things is visualization, right? And so I think one of the biggest ways that you can use delusion is to start your day or end your day with what you want your life to look and feel like. And so if you set a 5-minute timer, 10-minute timer, it's similar to Matthew McConaughey talking about you're writing a movie script, like it's a movie writing, whatever, for your life. And you're like, man, you can envision and be like, oh man, when I have this partner who's so loving, I'm going to feel so loved and feel so safe in our $3 million home in Baldwin Hills in LA, and I'm gonna drive my Porsche to work and it's gonna be turquoise because that's my color, and I'm gonna feel so healthy in my nice fit body. It's like a lot like our vision boards that we did at the beginning of the year. You're going to then figure out what that looks and feels like in your life and try to match that vibration and those emotions every day, and then that makes things come into your life. So that's the first one. The second one is you could do something like Jim Carrey and write yourself a check and then look at it every day, or just think about, man, when I get that first $1 million for my company, what am I going to spend it on? How am I going to invest it in my company? And then use that energy like, oh man, when I get the email that tells me that I got it, I'm gonna be so excited, and just kind of start to play out those acts in your life.
Yes, I love that. And it reminds me of a few examples and I'm like, actually, those could be considered delusion. One is remembering superhero P and creation of an alter ego. I remember one time when I wrote out like this, this person does this and this and they act like, blah, blah, blah. And you're doing things that probably aren't you and obviously in your moment, but you can live into that, right? And so when you live as that person, when you move in a certain vibe of, yes, I have, I do this with my clients and blah, 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 like it fits, like you become that person. Another thing, is when we talked about writing like our life manifesto, things like that, where you're really like, this is what it looks like. And it may be way far from where you are right now. And another, even with what you said with the vision boards and things of that nature that folks do, that can kind of be considered like, okay, this is delusional when you look at the numbers and the facts right now. But today's delusion can be tomorrow's reality. And
let's be clear,
never know, and it's all like a moving toward a space, and so outside of the delusion of like I want to meet an alien or shoot, that might that
might be cool.
Yeah, that's probably not even that delusional. But when you're thinking about your life, you can decide to like live in it, and how you talk about it can help you make that happen. I guess this is where it gets all like, woo. But y'all know what we talk about.
Yeah, it gets a little woo-woo, but I think it's real. One of my favorite people to listen to for manifestations and things is Neville Goddard. He's dope. Look him up on YouTube. There's a bunch of stuff. But one of the things he says is, signs precede, they do not follow. And what he means is if you wait until the world shows you that you're worthy, you're always going to be waiting. So what would it look like for you to know that you're going to be taken care of financially before the check hits your bank? What would it look like to know that you're going to be in this beautiful, loving relationship before the person is in front of you? Like, what does it look like to have that sexy body and feel strong and good in yourself before you actually see the physical manifestation of that in your reality? And as you're able to match those energies and do those habits, like Lexi said, like whenever your actions and your intentions and everything meet, that's when it can meet you. But if you're always in denial, then it's not going to meet you. And I love what you said, like, today's delusions can be tomorrow's reality. They can be today's reality. Like, you never know what can happen. And so I think when we close ourselves off to money don't grow on trees, I have to work really hard for money. If you listen to all these narratives that you have, like, they might be keeping you in a box and keeping you very limited. So what would it look like to change those things that are holding you back?
And then is there a line where delusion is gone too far? I would say yes.
Absolutely.
And for me, that I feel like that looks like if I'm talking to you and it feels like when it's like it's straight lies, right? If I'm talking to you, you're like, oh yeah, I'm headed home, the maid is already cleaning up on the third floor, and I got 200 extra bedrooms, and like if you're just talking and it literally is not what's real, then I would be kind of concerned, and I would be talking like, are you okay? Like, haha, what are you talking about? And then you might have been like, oh, I was just having a manifestation, I just want to see how it feels, and okay, cool. But if you were talking about things as if they were real, certain types of things, and they are not, I feel like that's too far. And there is a way that you talk about going back home to the palace, and you can still talk about things in that way because that is what that is to you. Was that kind of clear?
Kind of. I'm going to build on it. You can tell me if I'm off. So, for example, when one of my homegirls, she's one of my manifestation partners, and she was here, and I was picking her up, and I was just texting her, like, oh, you're Uber Black, downstairs, Porsche, Macan, da-da-da-da-da. And she was like, she came downstairs, and she said, I didn't know if I was looking for that or your car, but I see the manifestation. I appreciate it. So, like, I don't think anything's wrong with that. But to your point, so, like, straight lies with no action, no anything behind it. I would say another one is whenever you're actually overspending or not, like any place you're putting yourself in harm because of a quote unquote delusion. Like, man, I know if I stand out here in this place in the middle of the street, an alien's going to come get me right now. Dangerous. That's the issue. We should probably not be doing those things. And anytime you're trying to use delusion instead of doing the work, so like, oh, I'm just going to think myself into a healthy body and never move and never eat healthy and never do that. I would also say that can be really problematic, although there are studies about how our brains don't know the difference between reality and what we're thinking. So you can actually, increase your health by thinking about things. That shouldn't be the only thing that you're doing towards something.
And it is what you're thinking, though, because sometimes we think we're thinking the right thing, and what we're thinking about is how bad we feel in our body now, as opposed to the actual thought that's like taking you there. One thing about all of this that is important to remember is, yes, what you think is kind of what is real to your body. And so, like we said before, why not be in a space that feels good? But two, going off of something else that you had said, most teachings do say like you feel a thing and then it becomes, and then it happens. You feel good before the relationship pops up, or you're doing well with your money and then you get some. So a lot of times it's so important to focus on feeling good. And what we can do is we can tell ourselves all the good things, be grateful about everything around us, and be in a space that feels good and that allows us to have the energy, put the effort in to feel more of that. That's all good delusion to me.
Yeah, same. And living in that space of your ideal self. I love when you circle back to Hero P and how we can show up as our highest self every single day. You can't lose when that's happening. And if you're struggling with this, like delusions and manifestations and things that quote unquote aren't real, I would just challenge you to think about ways you can change your perspective. That's really the easiest thing. So oftentimes we have very negative narratives like, oh, they canceled dinner because I'm not that important to them, or they did this or whatever, and you never.
Actually, that could be delusional, right? Like,
yeah, that is negative delusional. Yeah, that's a great point. I feel like if you're gonna be delusional or have these narratives, which we all do, why not make them something positive? And even in the event of the person like really didn't like you and something really happened, like, oh man, thank God the universe is keeping people who are not for me out of my way.
Yeah.
Moving people so the right person can come in, so people who actually love me can support me and be here. There's always ways to look at things. Now, this does not absolve you from doing the self-work. So if you know you're not a good person, or you know that you're not working on yourself and growing in the ways that you should, this is not a license from Carlie's couch to go out there and be an asshole and then be like, it's everybody else's problem. Because that's super delusional, and not in a good way. But whenever you are doing all these things, like, why not do things that feel better and align you with the energy of where you want to be?
Yes. So this week, let's practice beneficial delusion.
Dun, dun, dun.
Live in that space of what you want in your life, and see how that helps you as you're making moves day to day.
Yeah, see how you can write a narrative that makes your life feel delicious and yummy and good to you. Like, what does that look like?
Yep. Thanks for listening to Carlie's Couch. We'll see you next week.
Bye, y'all.